Your kids don't care if you published a book or if you taught a class or if you won an award. Like, they don't give a
Welcome to Not Right Now, the podcast about parenting through all of this. Claire, we have an announcement to tell the people. I mean, they probably already heard because God knows when this will come out, but we're the best parents. The judges said
Yes.
we're the best parents. Let's treat this like the Oscars. You know how they're just like, where were you when you found out the news?
Well, I actually got an email from Signal, and then it started listing the names, and I got distracted, and I was like, I assume I'll find out if we did win. And then the system worked. And we got a great text from you and Willow. And thank you to everyone who voted for us, who took a second to go through that crazy website and sign up for whatever this is. What do we get?
I think what we get is spending money on trophies, basically.
Can we use a logo?
Sure, logos are free. I'll send you
All
the
right.
logos. Apparently, they're free from the entry fee. I'm proud of us. It's great. It's great. Gold star in parenting. I immediately, as my children yelled at me this morning, I was like, nope, I'm the best. The judges said.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No. You know what? I haven't even told my family yet because I was too busy congratulating my younger son on his cartoon for the kids newsletter club to think about myself. But no, I love it because every time I see one of those gold ribbons on like a Substack that says Substack of 2024, I always feel like a sense of jealousy. So this is the same as that, but at least it's something, some form of acknowledgement of our hard work sitting here talking to each other and then, clicking buttons that we did it. Proud of us.
That we did it. I'm very excited about that. Thank you to the Signal Awards. What else can we win? That's the question. Now I'm like, let's fucking go. Let's sweep whatever these awards are.
Aren't they going to do best podcast at the Golden Globe? I heard something like that. We
Are
gotta
they?
get one of those?
God, that'd be fucking great. Golden Globes. We can totally pay people off for that one. That's easy.
Yeah, 100%. No, I was laughing because I was thinking about, was it the Oscars some years ago where they gave that Oscar to The Flash for like fan favorite or something like that? And the movie had just come out a year ago. And anyway, it's very confusing. So as always, pleased when someone says they did a good job, but also ready for the downfall on the other side of it, which I'm sure is coming somehow.
This could not be a better segue into our content today, which I'm really excited about. But at the same time, you mentioned you wanted to talk about Love is Blind for a moment. Remind me what Love is Blind is.
Love is Blind is a show on Netflix. I would say, for me personally, it's like one of my dumbest shows. I don't watch The Housewives. Love is Blind is the show on Netflix where couples meet each other in these pods without seeing each other. And ostensibly, the experiment is like whether you can fall in love with someone without seeing them, although they can tell each other it's kind of, the premise is so dumb. It's very relaxing. I find it like a baseball game level of like background noise, and then occasionally something so fucked up will happen that you'll have to text your friends about it or go look at the Love is Blind Reddit to make sure other people confirm what you think. But there was a couple, they hadn't seen each other yet, and they were meeting, and typically they start asking each other, do you want kids? What kind of life do you want? Like things that kind of make sense. And one couple started off by saying, if you had kids, basically said, if you had kids, do you believe in corporal punishment? And yeah. And the guy was like,
who asked the question? The guy or the girl? Or the guy or the guy? Whatever it is. I don't know how the show works.
They don't do gay relationships on that show. That would be too outside the box. Way too interesting for Love is Blind to have.
Okay, so the guy asked this?
I think the guy asked this, on this, I don't remember which one asked it. One of them said, I was raised. I think she might have said it because he said, I was raised getting spankings, basically. And, there's certain people who think that if I was raised getting spankings and I turned out, fine or ostensibly fine, that means all children should be spanked. And this couple agreed on ahead of time that if they had kids, they would spank it, which to me is just, that is just a wild place to go before you've even met each other face to face to agree to like that. If you do create a child, you will. And I was telling you, I was like, I mean, I understand why people want to spank kids. I 100%, but like, you don't start off like before the kid thinking of the spanking. You know what I mean?
Usually no, it's like the whole you don't shake a baby thing. Of course I want to. No parent at no point ever thinks, I would never want to shake a baby.
No, you would never. You're like, what kind of idiot would do that? And then you're like, you're like, I see it. I understand now. And then the thing that was extra dark was that the girl, I think, asked the guy, the man asked the woman, and I did read on a Reddit thread that maybe this guy's closeted. That was like one theory that people had about this guy. But he asked the girl, he's like, what would you do if one of your kids came out of the closet? And she was like, well, I wouldn't be thrilled, but I would, of course, do the bare minimum of not kicking it out of the house per se. And again, I was like, they are plotting ahead of time before this child is born to spank it and to probably love it a little bit less if it was gay.
Mm.
And these people had not shaken hands, hugged. Anyway, it's just an interesting strategy. I just have to say, I've never kind of came at it that way.
I guess on the one hand, there's like, let's cut to the chase here. What kind of person are you? You know, and that
Mm,
answers a lot of questions because I'm a big fan of the idea of if this, then what else? Right. Which
mhm.
is, you know, if you're like, yeah, I would 25% reject my child for being any form of queer after I spent a few years beating them. I'm pretty sure I don't need to know what you look like. Either I'm down for that or I'm not, you know? But
Mhm.
at the same time, like you said, that goes hard. That's not, hey, we're in our 40s,
Uh,
we're dating, we should talk. Listen, do you want to have, let's get this part out of the way. Do you want to have kids? Totally different conversation when you're 20 and you're both idiots. You can't figure it out. When you're 40, you're like, maybe you've already got them, right? Or one of us has a ticking clock, or one of us has a medical thing, whatever it might be, right? But to jump from, let's assume we do. How much should we beat them and when? And at what age is a
right.
good age to tell them we
Yeah.
love them less?
And I think there's actually like some interesting conversations that could be had about like how you feel about certain childcare things that could be a deal breaker. You might as well get to it. And I think there's like a conversation to be had about not spanking as a discipline, but I think a lot of us have used our hands sometimes rougher than we wanted to once or twice. And we're not saying it was good. I certainly would want to look back on that part of those moments of my life, you know, and like the defending your life version of heaven and watch that. But I certainly was never like, "This works great, especially because my parents did it to me, and therefore I must do it," like, to that it's such a weird it's just a w that's very dark to be like, "I can't wait to have this kid," and then think the shit out of it. And like you said, like, you're saying that on the record, like, in front of TV cameras, you know, so anyway, this is why you need Reddit so that you can go to a thread and read someone's, like, theory that this man was closeted and abused by his parents, and that's why he feels this way, which is probably completely not true and libelous, but at the same time, that's not stopping me because I won an award, so I can say whatever the fuck
Yeah,
I
go
want.
fuck yourself. That's the deal. No, the gloves are even more off than
Guy.
they were before. Yeah, and
Mhm.
as we know, like so much domestic abuse stuff is passed down and this and that. But again, you are on TV. It is a weird, it's just a weird choice.
Yeah, and I guess the sad thing is, like, there's definitely people watching who are like, "Yes, right on, for sure." That
Completely.
conversation all the time.
Yeah, they're
Mhm.
like last Tuesday.
Uh,
I did that. I kicked my kid out, and right after
mhm.
I beat them, it's oh, Jesus Christ. Can I do
Yeah.
one last question that's not a part of our topic, even though you really just keep nailing the segues into this? Claire, subjectively, what is the best season?
Oh, it is fall. Well, fall with an well, it's summer. It is summer. Sorry to say that. I would say fall, but fall has allergy season. So I'm gonna say summer. Not because like I'm a beach girl or whatever, but I have come to realize that I photosynthesize. And so that's maximum sunlight. So I need
Mm-hmm.
that
Hmm.
like medically. So that's why I'm going with summer, not because I love the heat or anything like that. But fall is second. And to me, spring is sort of like a non-existent season. And then Chicago winter is about 9 months. So how about you? I feel like you know what you wanna say. What's the answer?
I've gone back and forth. I mean, again, I think this is actually, hold on. What's the fall allergy?
I think it's ragweed. It
Uh,
started in college, actually, at Georgetown. It's always September, like, when the trees start to fall and it gets a little dusty out. That's usually the worst time of
okay.
year for that
Okay.
stuff, so and the
Yeah.
bees.
Bees? Well, bees are important. We
Yeah.
need bees.
Well, I am allergic to bee stings, so they
Oh,
are I don't want them to die, but I don't,
six,
like
seven.
I can't oh, wow. Okay, alright. Did you see there was a Wall Street Journal article
Fucking
about
kill
6,
me.
7?
No, but I don't wanna read
Alright.
it 'cause I don't know. I don't want any
No.
part of it. God, fucking kill
I
me.
don't think you'll learn anything.
No, I think, again, it's subjective to everyone. I think it really matters how
Mm.
old you are and whether you have only ever lived in one place or maybe one or two, and how different are they? I've been
Yes.
all over the place. I've definitely been all over the place. Places where, like, when I was at Colgate in central New York, again, like you said, winter is 10 months, you know? And when it's
Mm.
50 degrees, girls are sunbathing because they're like, this is what we've got. And the summer is incredible, but it's
Oh,
6
yeah.
weeks and then that's it. And I've done LA, right? And I've done like the Middle East. So I get like endless summer. I think there's things I like about summer, but it's uncomfortable, you know, at times. It feels a
Yeah.
little difficult to escape.
I
Where fall into winter, man, cozy season, sign me up all day. I'm into it.
Yeah, no, I do like the leaves on the ground, like the smell in the air. I don't like in the summer when it is so hot that your choices are like misery outside or like the freezing cold inside for sure. Yeah, Chicago is crazy because I think it snowed the last 2 Halloweens maybe, but it's not unusual to have snow on Halloween and then have the 1 year canceled the marathon because it's turned out to be 85 and people are dying on the
Oh
route.
yeah.
So, it's and also where you live, summer is oppressive. Like that's swampy ass shit.
It totally is. And same time, it's funny. It was fucking hot and swampy. And one of my mother-in-law's friends visited from Gainesville, Florida, and she was like, "Oh, such a relief to be here." And I was like, "I bet it is
Really?
actually. I bet it's fucking terrible down there." So we've got it, but
Yeah.
I tell you right here, like where we are, we get all 4 seasons, and it's pretty great. So it's hot and nasty, and then it ends, and this fall's outrageous. Like it's outrageous. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, it is nice. The boys just transitioned to fall uniforms at school, so we have to start pulling up the pants.
Mm.
And James, poor James, he's 10 years old. He's very skinny, and he put on a size 8 pants that like went up to his, they started at his ankles,
Mhm.
but they were also still too big for him in the waist. Like he just has,
Yep.
that's fine. I remember talking to
Sorry.
an evil witch one time about being a teacher parent, and she said that before she had kids, she would kind of judge kids whose clothes didn't fit very well. She's like, "Why can't their parents stay on top of their clothing sizes?" And she's like, "Now my son's ankles are hanging out.
Mhm.
His clothes don't fit at all." She's like, "I can't give a shit."
How many times a day
100%.
I say, I don't know what to tell you. We have what we have. It's 7 o'clock in the morning. I don't want to fucking tell you.
I told you, this is so funny to me. Our kids were adjacent to some drama with our friends who forgot there was some football pants confusion and who had and didn't have pants. And as you can imagine, there was a lot of drama around it at the time.
Sure, yeah.
As anything about kids and equipment in sports is always drama. But they were driving to football, and out of nowhere, this kid said, "If you forget your pants, that changes everything." Just wisdom for the ages like it
I mean, write it in stone, you know?
from the mouths of babes.
Yeah. How could they accumulate so much wisdom in such little time? It does
Yeah.
change everything. It really does. I actually got married in my buddy's pants because for some reason we got married twice. We had the official one, Justina and I, like 3 hours before
Mhm.
our quote unquote real wedding. Because whatever reason, state of Virginia, whoever can marry you. And for the early one, I couldn't find my fucking pants. All my groomsmen were all getting ready, and I just looked at my buddy and said, executive privilege, give me the pants. So got married
Yeah.
in those. And then I guess we fixed it for the real one because we both had pants on. But, you do what you got to do. Claire, so we won an award. We're getting all kinds of good vibes from mostly like ourselves and the few friends, like you said, who did it, and the judges who decided on us. That's fantastic. My other show, I got a silver and bronze. Don't worry, I'm not thinking about why those weren't gold every minute of every day, which is
They don't have me.
part of my whole thing. That's it. The answer is it's because it's just me. You don't have to dial too deep on that. Willow said something the other day. We were talking about like other shows we could do and this and that. And she was like, I mean, sometimes it really just comes down to who people want to listen to. I was like, oh, got it. No, you can just say it. You can just say it. Like, it's enough of me. We all get the message. But it made me think of, did you feel a sense of like approval from that? And like, basically, where do you at our age now look for approval? And how has that changed as both you've aged, become a parent, and then been a parent? Because those are all really different, right? Because again, like,
Yeah.
for instance, again, and this will oversimplify and we get into it, going in reverse, been a parent, I don't give a fuck about basically everything, in case you can't tell about by this point. When you become a parent, all your friends who have kids, friends who don't have kids, your parents, your in-law, like, it never fucking ends. What book should I read? I'm doing it wrong. The book says this. You're arguing with your spouse. As you've aged, like all this different stuff. When you're a kid, when you're a teen, etc. So let's start with you.
Yeah.
Where do you look for approval now? Or do you?
I don't look for approval. No, well, I'll tell you what. I do look for approval every time I send out an email to like 10,000 plus people because, if you hear back good job, that means you're literally doing your job. And it doesn't have to be, something over the top. Someone just told me that they got a kick out of my survey that I sent out earlier today and it made their mood better. And that's like awesome,
Mhm.
or if I get an email from a school dad, like that was one that was nice. He was like, "Thanks for everything you do for the community," which is not much, but it was extremely nice. It was just a nice thing to say, meaning this parenting newsletter. I'm not doing shit for anyone, just for the record. And of course, the rare times that the kids compliment me, often it's prompted, but once in a while, if they tell me, and I don't, I don't get a lot of it from them, but it has been quite a journey because I definitely was someone who needed a lot of validation. Like firstborn, parents always had me doing things like extra credit. I think we talked about my grade point average and becoming a writer. I mean, I said this for a long time. I liked being a writer with my own byline because I like my name being on it. That's like my words. That's why I never joined like a TV room. Also, I never was invited or tried to. So that's, maybe that wouldn't have worked out. And that was pretty intense during the, like, early internet years because you could get a roundup, like a link from Gawker or something like that and feel really good about, the traffic, things like that. But being a writer is a lot of ups and downs. And so I mean, in the span of a day, in the span of an hour, I can go from being like, "Hey, you did a pretty good job," to being like, "You are such a fucking idiot. Like, no one you're doing a bad job," and I think I've evened out because first of all, I'm old now. I'm just an old lady in the ocean just trying to like, just keep moving. But, when I was writing a book, like for instance, I would be kind of wondering where my book review was in the New York Times, like I've never earned out. And so I'm just saying that like when you work in that kind of creative field, you can get your high fives and then you can get like big, slaps of reality about, what a nothing burger you are. So having kids was a hard adjustment to realize that your kids don't care, like, if you published a book or if you taught a class or if you won an award, like, they don't give a fuck. And so it's been an adjustment to, like, move from that needing of a certain kind of validation. And I have, more thoughts, but let me pause and hear from you because that's the professional validation. I haven't even talked about, like, personal validation, but how about were you always, looking you're not a firstborn, so I don't know if you're, like, as thirsty for approval as some of us firstborns tend to be.
No, I tried to really think about this a lot this morning. I think a couple things, like when I was in the last more like Wild West version of my professional career before this, where I was doing a lot of different stuff, like philanthropic stuff, investing stuff, doing some screenwriting things like this and that, I would get feedback on, again, screenwriting or whatever. And someone say, "Oh, you take notes well." And it occurred to me that one, I don't necessarily think that's true. Two, if there's anything, I think it's from having mostly good sports coaches in my life who would be like, "You got to fix your fucking batting stance or you got to fix your arm." Like, with, again, mostly the intention being to make you better so that we will win more. Like, that's it. It's not a personal thing. Again, mostly, not all the time. So I think that was helpful. And obviously, looking around at who could be successful in that stuff and who's not in the creative stuff, which is so subjective, right? There's some like objective highs and lows, but in between, it's so subjective. And knowing that, look, these people are just trying to get something made too, right? They're like, can you make it better so that it can be better? So that this isn't about you. Sometimes, not all the times. Certainly not all the time. But I think definitely when I was younger, so there was that. I mostly participated in sports that were objectively measurable. You were fast or you were not. This is your batting average or this is not. And so you were much more exactly and acutely able to measure both your performance and also your contribution to things. You're like, you either made it in the lineup or you didn't. And there's not a whole lot of confusion as to why, you know? You're either on the relay or you're not. And it's because like, you're not that fast. You can't swim at fucking stroke, whatever it might be. And school would be the same thing. You'd be like, oh, it's too bad I'm not valedictorian. It's like, well, you haven't opened a book in 3 months, you fucking idiot. So I think most of my validation came kind of almost automatically from participating in those things. Same thing with playing music forever. Like you would go and you try out for whatever chair and it's like, you either did your shit and you have some reservoir of talent that you've built on or you have not. And then it's ranked. So it was interesting to me because again, I think a lot of that was automatic. Outside of those things, I think it was probably some combination of, and again, these are like categorical, but like girls, again, coaches seeking approval beyond the measurable things. Like you said, someone just saying good job and you're like, I'll take that all day. And this is what I came back to. And again, I feel like this conversation, we could have 4 of them. The difference between, especially when you're young, and I think what is probably so different now, is explicit approval and implicit approval. Like I would imagine getting approval from the Ken Griffey Jr. poster on my wall, being like, he would probably think I had a great game today. So I'll take that, you know? It's completely insane. But
Mhm.
it was something, right? Or we've talked about like changing your instant messenger away message to, hoping that someone would see it and be like, oh yeah, she's pretty cool for liking that indie band because of the one lyric you found on Napster, you know?
Yeah.
So that is, I think, that was like the foundational pieces for me. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to have something, like, with metrics like that because I was not that like that. I had grades, but I didn't have sport per se, and, there's a name they talk about eldest girl syndrome, and it's also called Supergirl syndrome, and I've felt it, but I never realized it's like it's where firstborn daughters are sort of given from their fathers an expectation that you can excel, and there's no reason why you can't do as well as a boy or better than a boy, which is
Mm.
true and in a good place, but I do think, at least with my particular path, that ended up with a lot of anxiety, as well, and burnout, and so I definitely don't put that kind of pressure on my kids because I just first of all, it's a zero-sum game, you'll never win. There's no winning anyway, but let's say the winning is getting into a good college, or a certain kind of college. There's so many random things that go into that, and let's say you graduate, that doesn't mean you'll have a great job, doesn't mean you'll be happy, doesn't mean anything, but I'm aware that's my privilege speaking that I can say, "Well, my kids will be fine. We'll figure it out." But I don't think I would not force. I don't think I would push my kids to do these. Like, I remember my parents told me that it would be great if I could graduate in the top 20 people of my class, not 20%. And my class had 600 people in it. And I think I eked in at number 19 or number 20. And like, in looking back, I just think about, I can't believe I was like, okay, I'll aim for that and I will do it. But again, my mom was, like, always on my side, like, always pushing me, having extra kind of classes and things like that. So, I just don't wanna do that for someone else. I put so much pressure on myself. I could not enjoy putting that kind not enjoy, but feel putting that on someone else, especially because they have their own ways of feeling good about themselves, and it doesn't need to be, marked by particular grades or things like that. But, yeah, with James, it's kind of funny when you mentioned about the sports stuff because I saw it happen this year in football. He plays a lot of imaginary football. I don't know if you did that when you were a kid or baseball, like, where
All
you
of it, all the
he'll
time.
I'll yeah, I'll watch him. I mean, it's just so normal in our house. Like, he'll play a whole football game in his head. Like, he'll throw himself it's very common to wake up in the morning and hear him, like, crashing around because he's, like, diving for balls and things like that. And, like, more power to him. I love that for him. But this year, he had to play football with some actual big kids, and actually follow coaches and plays and listen. And he realized that he's much smaller than a lot of the kids in his imagination. And I could tell that it was a real he didn't care for that humbling process, which I completely
Mm,
understand. But also
mhm.
I'm like, if you are serious about not serious about sports, because I don't care about him being I don't want him to be a professional athlete, which he finds undermining, of course. But anything in life, you have to suck at things. I became a writer because I put in the proverbial 20,000 hours of, like practice and fun and grinding, and he needs to feel the same way. So that's a safe way to kind of feel like out of your element, I think, and not feel like you're excelling, which is you need that. Otherwise, who needs like a bunch of white men around who's feel like they only won because they've won every single game in their imagination? But
Mhm.
how about your kids? Do they different ways of speaking about, like, the validation they need and how they like it?
Yeah, I mean, they all struggle with it differently, slash, you know, take it in differently or seek it out differently. There's that idea like you should quote unquote compliment them like 10 times as much as you correct. Well, I don't remember if that's kids or dogs, but it doesn't matter. It probably applies the same thing. Essentially, don't correct them all the time, which is fair, but also they're fucking idiots. So you got to do some correcting or else they're going to walk into the fire. I don't know what to tell you.
But I texted you the other week, I was like, when a kid is woken up and left on every single light in the house, it's really hard to not lead with, "Can you not do that?"
No, every day I walk in from school and I'm like, you're not supposed to be doing these four fucking things. Like, can I come in the door again and you not consciously choose to do things you're fully aware you're not supposed to be doing? Do them when I'm not going to walk in. I don't fucking know. It's different, and I think about like they're doing different stuff. Got our first volleyball game tonight. That'll be interesting. That's a very team sport, right? I
Mm,
mean, among the most, you literally are five
yeah,
people trying to keep a ball in the air. That's
moves
very different
fast.
from fucking track or something like that. I also think it's so different because, like, as much as we really don't do screens much at all, the influences and opinions and perspectives, again, well, I mean, of course, for girls, it's a nightmare, but now also for boys, without even going as far as fucking Andrew Tate, going, okay, I watched this 3-hour insanity on YouTube. am I going out to live my life that way? And is that what they would think and my friends would think who've also watched this? You always try to do what you get approval from your friends and shit like that, right?
Mhm.
Like I didn't have FOMO my whole life. No, sorry, reverse. I had FOMO for quite a while, right?
Mhm.
I was the kid, and I told my 12-year-old this the other day. I said, "Man, I remember getting voted most popular in middle school and like taking the picture in the yearbook, like in my Speedo, because I was like, I'm fucking shredded and this should be memorialized. You're welcome. But going home and having raging insecurities, you know? And this is what I try to tell them about how middle
Yeah.
school is miserable for everyone, but obviously for some people it's much, much worse. Anyways,
Did you
but
make him look at the picture of you being shredded, by the way, to be like, try to be like this, more like this?
no, I framed it on his wall. Yeah, I make him look at it every morning. I'm like, you're this or you're nothing. Gold medal, gold medal. But, I think it's the same in so many fundamental ways for them, but also different
Mhm.
because of all these invasive influences of what you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to be. So, like, I think there's some things from like your volleyball, your sports, or music, or whatever it is. And we always tell them, we're like, whether it's putting your shoes away in the morning, especially with the ADHD kid, or just in general,
Mhm.
do a favor to your future self. And that comes up
Yeah.
to like when you were at the band tryout, you can't go back and put in like the 20 minutes of practice you could have done every day because you're going to get objective approval right now, one way or another. And
Yeah.
some of it's in the hands of who's doing the proving, of course, but some of it's like just the work you put in. And
Yeah.
you're going to learn a lesson every time. But I think the day to day stuff is harder. I definitely try not to, like you said, fucking write him about stuff very early on. I mean, I was so obsessed with my times and my batting average and all this different stuff. Grade point average, not so much. Was it above one and
Mhm.
a half? Great. We're still here. We're allowed to come to school. But everything else, like I knew to the 100th of a second. And I tried to very consciously, kind of like when I thought about this the other day. I think the number one thing I do as a parent is I don't drink. I really think that's like
Mhm.
the fundamental decision I made because there's everything else beyond that's not great. But I remember when they started getting into, again, measurable stuff, sports, whatever, school. I was like, here's the deal. I'm not going to give a shit or even look into what a quote unquote good time is or something like
Mhm.
that unless you say, this is the time I'm interested in. Can you help me remember
Mhm.
it or print it out for whatever the fuck? I was like, I refuse to be the parent when you get out of the pool and it's like, why didn't you go have a second faster? Why didn't you
Yeah.
make third
No.
chair and fucking trumpet?
Yeah, no, I have a friend who just ran the Chicago Marathon, and she's my age, and she has 2 kids, and she is mad at herself because she wanted to be sub 4 hours, and I think she finished in 4:02. And, for me, I'm like, I think that sounds pretty good, but, like, that would kill me that to, not be able to enjoy your success. It was funny, I gave Paul a compliment last night, and sometimes when he's really psyched, he, like, pounds himself on the chest. I don't know if that's a boy thing or not, like a monkey. Long story, but there was some fuck up in my shower where the handle fell off and Steve replaced it, but he replaced it in a hurry where normally you have to turn the shower up to turn the water on, and then it has whatever. So Paul told me last night that he fixed it himself, and I said, "How'd you do that?" And he said, "Oh, I just unscrewed it and screwed it back on." I was like, "That's awesome," and I patted him on the head, and I said, "You're your father's son," because Steve is a handy guy, and you could tell that was like he felt good about that, like, he got complimented for being well, first of all, masculinity, we could talk, it's gonna be a different conversation, but nothing to me is better than a man who can, like, any person, not me, but I really appreciate Steve for being handy, and I try to praise him for that in front of the boys, especially because I happen to notice that most men I know who go off about masculinity cannot fucking do anything themselves. They can't replace a light bulb or anything like that. And so I want the boys to be like, bullshit less, fix things more if possible. So I was happy that Paul seemed pleased that I saw him doing that. So, one little compliment. We'll see if that continues.
Knowing that there are other potential sources of approval, again, explicit or implicit, out there that are additive to yours and Steve's, or even different in some way, but you support it from books or movies, like even characters in movies or TV or whatever it might be. How much do you, if at all, sort of proactively supply those? And so there's the writer Austin Kleon, who's great. He wrote a really good post about, and I might have talked about this, about like making his house sort of a library and how he sets traps. Like he'll just leave books around his house, certain books.
Mhm,
And he's like, I don't push them on my kids because they'll never fucking read them, but maybe they'll pick them up. I'm like,
mhm.
do you do that at all?
You mean traps for the kids to, like, accidentally do something good?
or something they could
Mhm.
learn from, or a character they could learn from? Or do you do more, I found this and I'll put it in the show notes. It didn't seem like some raging thing, which probably meant it's actually good. And I liked it a lot. A book about like mental health for like adolescent athletes. And it's really great. And that I specifically gave my kid because he was having a hard time. I was like, there's some really good shit in here. Take what you will from it, man.
Is that a picture with a kid and a lion also at the same is it like my parents gave the boys a book about mental health and athletes, and they were like, "The fuck
I have
is"
no idea. Yeah, I have no idea.
No, honestly, not too much. I guess I should. We were pretty free and easy about that kind of stuff because 'cause they're at church, they're on the football
Ah,
team,
yes, church. Right.
so I'll try to mention if I do something, one of us does something amazing, and also Paul has compulsory volunteer time right now for confirmation, which it's not hard for him to do, he likes it, actually, so, anyway, I feel like it's baked in a little bit now where we're not thinking about it,
Mm,
where maybe we should, although now I might have to start going to church with Paul, which I don't wanna do, but ICE is fucking in town and targeting our church because of a lot of Spanish-speaking people who go there, so I was telling a theologian friend, I was, like, mad at Donald Trump for making me go to church, like, as a protest, and she as a theologian, she said, "Every time you go to church, it should be a protest," and I was like, "I know, but"
oh, not right now. Not, God damn it. That's not why I'm
Yeah,
here. Let
yeah.
me ask you this to broach it, because I think I mentioned like I was a religious major and still read and study all that stuff, but we're fucking heathens. Like we don't do any of it. Our whole thing is you can read about all that shit, participate in what you want if you want, don't hurt anybody, et cetera, et cetera. Like how much is going to Catholic school and just going to church in general and upcoming confirmation and stuff like that? How much is that in the like 24/7 implicit source of approval? Because Catholicism's like on the start, like you're playing with two strikes. So how much is that hanging around? Because we don't have it, but we do try to, again, like the moral pieces of it for sure, no question. But we're
Yeah.
not just like, well, Jesus wouldn't want you to do that.
Right. Well, it's funny when you're, like, born and raised Catholic because I think in some ways you're much more flippant about it, and you're a cafeteria Catholic when you're like that, and you're like, "Well, I'm not doing that. That's stupid," and, I mean, I've gone to confession and told the priest, like, "Well, I've done things that I know you won't like, but I'm not sorry about it," and he's like, Thanks for being here, honestly." And so our kids go to I would say pretty liberal parish compared to other parts of the country. So I think that they are getting thoughts of it's more community service and empathy than it is fire and brimstone as far
Great.
as I was not thrilled that there was a baby bottles for life volunteer thing that Paul will not take part in, but there was an option for them. And a friend of mine was like, "Do you think the babies are alive or not alive?" And I was like, "You know what they're talking about. When they say for life, they're not talking about
Yeah.
living babies." But Catholic's kind of Catholic, we don't have to do that part of it. That's fine. So, they're not super religious on their own, but at the very least, like an hour, 45 minutes a week, being forced to just kind of sit there. And then at least for a couple minutes of that 45 minutes, you list off people who might need praying for. That's good. I think that's
Sure.
a good
Yeah,
routine to
there's
do.
nothing wrong with that in the slightest. Like more people should be proactively, constructively, like building empathy into their everyday lives, like wherever the fuck you're doing it, even if it's in like my God, I almost said a record store. God damn it.
He volunteered and again, this is, like, fun for him because he is around these kids who do that as well, but there's a thing called buddy baseball where some of the kids who go to the, special education school play baseball with the league here, and each kid,
That's so cool.
has a buddy. Yeah, and so Paul just had this kid, and he kinda helped run around with him and cheer for him, I'm like, "You're better than I am by far.
Oh,
Good job, kid."
yeah, it's not even close. The day I like fully reveal that to them, I don't think they'll be very surprised. I think a lot about, and I go back to our conversation about, do you say no to your kids? And I laughed at you, but I do think vis-a-vis this and like approval from your parents and like how to live, and I probably not as clear from my parents, even though my mom's
Mm,
like the best person. I just don't think it was as explicit, laid down the law. As far as
mhm,
saying no, like I believe in and try to set a floor of these are like values and codes as practically emphasized as I can. And I think that's
mhm.
where you have to say no sometimes. And where I try to say to them, if they do something dumb, I just go, we don't do that. We're not the,
Yeah.
so sorry. Again, I think I told you, like a 12-year-old, like nicest kid, best kid, so much better of a person than I am. And wrote something to a friend on his iPad. And as I told him, I read every message and will for a long time. And I just saw it and I just said, hey, the first lesson is you should know We don't do that. And second lesson is anything you write down anywhere is going to be shared, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. And I just fucking took it. I was like, that's the floor, you know?
Yeah.
And of course, I
Was
did
he
all that
more
dumb
mad
shit.
or sad? Did he cry or get mad at you, or is he ashamed? What was his reaction?
He was very much, yeah, no, I know that you're
I fucked
fucking
up.
right. And then 20%, which I think is fair. He was like, the person I was talking shit about deserved it. And I was like, totally might be true. 100%. Totally get it. I don't know this person, whatever. I was like, but we don't put it in writing. Like, we're not doing that. And we don't talk about people like that. Sorry. You know, you feel however, I'm not saying like your feelings aren't real, but I'm like, we're not fucking doing that. That's just, again, that basic shit. And same thing, like you said, fucking practicing empathy on a weekly basis is great. If you can do that, great. You know? So I try to set my approval as like a baseline. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Right. I think it's kind of funny that we're talking about our approval, because also our kids are pretty much at the age where our approval is like really losing value as a currency.
Right. And I was going to ask you, but that's kind of what I mean about like setting up accessory sources of it in some ways,
Yeah.
which is watch, like, I'm going to be like, we're watching Saving Private Ryan. Here's the deal. These guys
Right.
didn't want to do this fucking job. They talk about it the entire movie, that they not only did they not want to serve, one of them's an English teacher, that they don't want to go this job. Why the fuck is this guy worth saving? But 3 of his fucking brothers died. And I'm going to be like, what is the lesson you got out of this?
And our dad is like going through some shit and he's making us watch this movie.
Correct. The note behind the note is,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, wait, can I tell you a funny anecdote real quick? Because it sort of ties into social approval, but
Yeah.
also the internet. I went on a walk this morning with a friend of mine, this woman I've known since literally she bullied me in middle school. And now we are old women together who walk by the lake together. And she was telling me how her daughter, who's in 6th grade, just got a phone because she, gets around on her own. And my friend didn't, she wanted to be very careful, obviously. And she did that thing where she had a contract for her daughter and had another high school friend of ours who works in sex ed at the children's hospital review the contract. And she thought she had dotted all her I's and crossed all her T's. And then it turned out that her daughter was chatting with some girl who'd given her phone number through Roblox chat. And so immediately my friend Julia is like freaking out about whether this girl is real or a sex predator or not. No, it turns out it's just a lonely girl across the country. And then Julia says, does she not have any friends of her own? Like, why is she talking to you all the time? And then she realizes that her daughter says to the 4th grade girl, why don't you have any friends of your own? Why are you talking to me all the time? So Julia goes from being like terrified for her daughter's, life, to being mortified that her daughter is like being an asshole to someone who she just met through a game, and meanwhile, I'm just marveling over how Julia and I met like swimming at the YMCA before, like, I think cordless phones were the latest technology at the time. So it's the kind of thing where I was like laughing, although it wasn't funny, but just like marveling over it. Got this like Curb Your Enthusiasm feeling of it as well, where like you don't want your kid to be bullied, but also like you don't want your kid to be an asshole because that's also annoying. So that's like why I have Steve occasionally look at Paul's text, because I was like, I think I, with my woman eyes, would be mortified by what he's saying as a 12-year-old, but Steve, as a former 12-year-old boy, like,
Totally. No, at some point you got to pass
better.
that baton, and not because it's not the right thing, because you don't want any fucking part of that shit, man. You don't want any part. And again, I'm saying the floor. I'm like, 90% of the stuff you guys are saying, 1, I don't understand. 2, I don't want to understand, but I know enough to catch the things that shouldn't be. And here's the deal. I was doing it. Sorry. Like, I don't know what to fucking tell you. Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's really interesting to think about like where we got approval, why we sought it out, and from whom. It goes to the meeting your heroes thing, where like maybe you sought out approval for someone and then they turned into, like the teenager you worshipped growing up, and it turns out they're a fucking terrible person.
I mean, it is hard for me to parse it because just right now I'm on Substack, which becomes like more in your face, tells you what a like success you are or are not as a writer and how many like literal friends you have. And then you have social media, and like, I don't want to be a business manager for myself. I don't want to be monitoring my own popularity. It's actually killing me. But also, like, it has come to this is where it is. Like, I
Yeah.
kind of would be foolish to not care a little bit. But I was talking to Steve because he used to have a lot of social anxiety. And he was like, you feel like you don't give a shit anymore? And I was like, oh, well, I've crossed over to not giving a shit
Yeah.
a long time ago. But he was like, I used to feel a lot more self-conscious around the other dads at our school. And now I'm just much more relaxed. I'm like, that's great. feel like a certain contracting of my social circle right now. And I'm not happy about it per se, but also just I feel like I have a lot less energy to care about more people at once. And I can kind of sprinkle a little bit more. But I feel sad about that because I used to pride
Sure.
myself on being like a really good, consistent friend to a lot of people. And now I'm a little bit more like, I care about you and I love you, but I'll be demonstrating it in a more subtle way, perhaps for a little while. But
Mhm.
it's weird
Mhm.
from someone who used to care very fucking deeply about how many friends she had and whether someone was mad at her. I was always where people were mad at me. And now I'm like, well, probably not. Probably everyone's too busy to be mad at me. And if they are mad at me, they should tell me. And if they're not telling me, then I can't. It's not my problem. So anyway, it's a wild journey. And I feel
It
for
is.
Charlotte that she's like right entering that portal, right when all that really starts to get very potent.
Yeah, it's fucking gnarly, and don't envy it for her. I would love to protect her for it, but at the same time, hopefully you come out of it with a slightly better skin about it. I don't know. There's no way to fucking skip it, man.
What's
Yeah.
something stupid that you did as a youngster because you wanted social approval?
You said you have a heart out in 20 minutes. I like Jesus Christ, Claire, are you fucking kidding?
Name just one. Just name one. It doesn't
Well,
have to be like a big epic, like I stayed up all night with some friends in college once. So we drove to King's Dominion and stayed overnight in Richmond. We spent way too much money in a hotel, but also it was like one of those adventure, like that wasn't even that damage. That's pretty innocent, but still, that's an example. Like we could have gotten car wreck, anything like that. So I'm sure you have more spicy ones.
oh no, I do for sure. I mean, a friend texted me, one of my, my circle is kind of intentionally small, but they're all sort of lifers. But one of them texted me the other day about how good a Lord of the Rings movie is. I was like, well, this is every fourth text between us. We went and saw them when they came out, this and this. And it reminded me very quickly, and again, like watching my kids, that when we went to go see them, we went to the big theater from here. We were 19, 20, I don't know, something like that, 18, 19, 20. It was about 25 minutes away on the highway. And we drove in our cars 100 plus miles an hour. Wait for it, directly next to each other, and thought it would be cool if whoever was driving this car could pass something into the window of whoever was the passenger in that car. And again,
Uh-huh.
instantly I went from like his text to that in 10 seconds. And I was like, I would fucking murder my child.
If they survived it, if they survived that,
But
that
because I
act.
was like, what am I going to be? The person who says no to this? It didn't even cross my fucking mind. And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Like, I definitely had the FOMO applied to the same thing you're saying, which is this person mad? Are they having a good time? I am not kidding, where I still have this is how insane I am. Are you ready? We went to that Wicked concert thing, right? That's going to premiere in a couple weeks. I think November 5th or 6th. Great. And I thought to myself, while they were doing it and watching these incredible people, not just the two women, but everybody involved, the composer, everybody. At one point, I thought to myself, I wonder if Cynthia's having a good time. Why? What, does she feel like this is enough for her? Does she feel like
Yeah.
this is below me?
That's her
Well,
it is her job
that's her
too. Like
job.
she's
Also, she's
yeah.
clearly flying through the air, having a great time. But, it's the same thing. I
Well,
think I told you one time we had a big cancer fundraiser at our house, and I was mad because it was hot out, and I thought people would be mad at me. And my buddy was like,
oh, yeah.
you don't control the weather. Like, why are you still, no one fucking cares.
No, I can't. That's why I don't really host as much anymore because, like, I have had that anxiety of one person might not be having a good time, and it's because I failed to prepare them with, like, enough information about my other friends there or something like that, and yes, the responsibility of other people's good time was certainly something I cared a lot about, and, yeah, and I think having kids also, especially like, we've talked about this before, Steve is much more concerned about the kids not being sad. And I wouldn't say I'm not concerned about it, but, he was gonna go to a work dinner, for instance, on Friday with us, and it was gonna be like a big deal in a fancy restaurant, and he was excited, and now he's gonna back out, I think, because he feels bad about missing James's last football game of the year. And that's a really good fathering, but also on the other hand, there could be made a case that James is the smallest kid on the JV squad, and it's the last game of the year, but he could not take the math of all of his years of being a really good parent instead of it's a lot like social approval. You could get all the great comments in the world, and then one criticism, especially if it's from yourself, will completely negate all of that.
Oh,
Like,
sure.
I can still remember a couple of years ago, like the email I got from an evil witch reader telling me that I was ableist because I was like making fun of how Paul can't use a knife and fork. And I kind of replied, sort of jokingly, sincerely. And she was like, she doubled down, was like, no, you better check yourself. I'm concerned about your child. And I was like, oh, fuck off. But again, why does that stick in my head compared to the plenty of nice,
Mhm.
not, appropriate now, a number of nice things people have said to me. But yeah,
Yeah.
this is part of also like why I don't write books anymore, because like publishing a book is a dream come true and that's great. Also, no one tells you, like, if you haven't published a book that, like, unless you are Stephen King or Malcolm Gladwell or what's her name who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, who, like, cut her hair and did all those drugs with her wife and almost killed her. Like, you have to do so much work after that, and that is very humbling as well. You think you're done when you publish the book, and now you have to go out and convince people to buy it. So, I used to be a lot more active about the hustle, and I can't anymore. And the weirdest thing is that I feel guilty about it. And I think we talked about that with a caller from a while ago, is you're like, "Why do I feel so guilty that I'm not, like, trying to get more approval in various ways?" And then you're like, "Also, there's ICE, also there may be not an election in 2028, like, all of these things."
Sorry,
So,
don't care. Yeah, and it is on a spectrum for sure that's constantly out of our control. And yeah, I mean, I totally get all that. It's not fun.
have you taken your kids to a protest, a march?
We did. One of my favorite pictures of my kids, which feels kind of dark to say, I'll send to you, is of them at a guns rights march when they were like
Mm.
4. And I thought, boy, if I was ever going to put a picture of my kids online, like this is pretty awesome. And we did not. I'll send it to you. But yeah, we've
Mm.
taken them to a bunch. No Kings is this weekend. Let's
Yes.
fucking do it. Yeah, no, 100%. We're doing all that shit.
We are so not right now about No Kings also. What is it? Is it Saturday?
Saturday.
Yeah. I mean, this is both pathetic and also it's the truth. And I've talked with other moms who like want to go, other parents, and they're like, "Well, Paul's got an eye doctor appointment at 11:40, and then we're going out to the suburbs from 2 to 4 for someone else's party, and then Paul has this zombie scramble and a fall social afterwards." So you're like, when is the time to
To
stand up?
protest our dictator. Yeah,
Yeah.
I got a full, what is the quote from old school? I don't know. We had a pretty busy Saturday. I don't know if we'll have time. Yeah, no, that's real. We all laughed at it when we were fucking 22, and now you're just like, yeah, 100%. In the middle, I've got 2 baseball games, one of which I'm coaching, a swim practice. I'm supposed to go to a William and Mary conservation thing, and I'm like, okay, I will fit it in. I will try to
Yeah.
fit it in. But it's
Yeah.
not about approval. It's just me just going, I'm trying.
We talked about this, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago about, yeah, I mean, that's approval. And that's a very Catholic thing, actually, is like, do you need approval if you're doing something good? Is it inherently better to do it in private or
What do they
not?
call that? The third thing? You don't need the third thing, the approval from it, right?
Yeah. But if you're telling other people about it and then joining, there's a big difference behind that. So, but yeah, there's that weird FOMO about, well, should we march? Should we not? Does the march do anything? Do we suck if we don't? And then you're like, is this about me? More?
But this is also, by the way, like why we built our What Can I Do site, because everybody fucking shows up differently. We would like you to show up different ways. But if you only donate from your sweatpants, it's something. I will fucking take it. Would I like you to show up with your body? For sure. We'll give you ways to do that. But if you can't make the march, you can't make the march, I did
Yeah.
want to make one point just to go back to you're saying the book stuff and all that kind of things. Dana's got Wicked coming out. We knew how the first one did. Will the second one measure up to that? What does that even mean? Et cetera, et cetera. Every other thing she's ever made, this and this, going to restaurants. I'm of 2 minds, right?
Mhm.
But I do really believe in the first one, which is, yes, people, obviously, especially with the internet, can just be mean. And most of the comments left online are going to be negative ones because that's
Yeah.
who's going to make the time to do it, even if it's in good faith or not. I do believe, though, that you should go into, as you are choosing your occupation, vocation, however you want to show yourself in public. If you are putting yourself or your work or your hobby in public, you are making an implicit contract that you're putting it out there to be judged. If you're going to open a restaurant, people are going to review it because you're saying, please come spend your money on my food that I think is good enough for that money. And people are going to say it is or it isn't. And that's what you're putting up there. And it's the same thing as making a movie, making a book, all this kind of shit. And you have to find a way to navigate that because there's no way. It's easy to be like, oh, this critic's a fucking asshole and sexist. Of course they are. Like, that's what we've built here. Like, I don't know what to tell you. But you have to find ways to know that's what you're getting into and how can you deal with that. And it's harder for some people than others. I remember being in a screenwriting class very early. Dana was like, go to this one. It's good. This guy's smart. And I remember this young woman being like, what if you write something you feel like is really good, but you don't want anybody to read it and you just put it in a drawer? And the guy was like, it's fine. Like, you won't have a
Mhm.
career because literally no one will read it. And so
Yeah.
it cannot get made. But if you're not up for all the rest, like you said, with the book stuff, then you're not. And you got to make that
Yeah.
call. But that is what you're
Yeah.
doing. If you're like, I'm going to put my art out there, I'm going to play trombone or my little band at the community gathering,
Mhm.
they might not bring you back. Or they
Yeah.
might think it's great. But you're signing up
Yeah.
for that. Or do your
Right.
pottery in private. I don't know what to tell
Yeah.
you.
They gave a little spiel to the kids' newspaper club yesterday morning about editing and getting editors' notes and how, like, even the best writers need editors. And it turns out, so small world. One of the other volunteers in the newspaper club is a former editor of mine. I used to write for the Chicago Tribune. So we're saying, like, we're still friends, even though she had, and she was never a hard editor, but she sent me work back,
Sure.
comments back, being like, this is not good enough. And that's how you get better. And if you are smart, you like seek that out. But at the same time, I can't bring myself right now to log into my email for Evil Witches because, like, maybe there was an error in my survey that I sent out, and I'm gonna have to deal with that and then carry that around, and,
As you should.
yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, it is. It's kind of funny too. Is like Steve's validation is that he puts on these videos that he does. There's a comedy show that John Green and I actually founded together that still goes on today, but I don't produce it. But Steve puts on, he shows like short films that are funny. And I go, and sometimes I go and I cheer for him, and other times, like, sounds so mean, but maybe it's just true. I can't go because I just like don't wanna go drive downtown to applaud, like, for Steve. Like, I could just applaud for him at home and not do it in front of other people. Like, I don't know how to explain it. I've had all these feelings about men and validation, and forgive me for generalizing as always, but I'm like, men really need approval and attention. And now I gave birth to who, like, need it clinically, not to
Mhm.
mention my dad, who also needs attention. And, so sometimes I have to, like, that's Steve does exercise with a really nice lady who, like, laughs at all his jokes and listens to his stories, and I'm like, "Thank
Great.
God for Erin." Erin is the nice woman that I'm not, who
Mhm.
listens to him and doesn't text while he's talking, things like that.
I get it. Yeah, again, that's the accessory avenues of approval that are available if they are constructive and safe, and that's what you realize you're signing up for, right? And the same thing again, like if you're telling the kids like you're gonna do a sport, you're gonna play music, you're gonna do theater, and you might not get the role you want, but you might get a lesser one. Look, some kids have some quote unquote reservoir of talent in some whatever it might be. Some do not. Some can add to that with hard work. Some cannot. Sorry, you're gonna find out
Mm.
eventually, like that something's just not your thing, right? I was
Right.
huge and I was terrible at fucking basketball. Sorry, coach. It's not gonna work out.
Yeah.
But there's also times where they're like, here's the work you can do to improve it. Like you gotta
Mhm.
choose to do that. And then you can see that. And I will approve of you more because you're doing better. But again, I think it's the subjective things. I think it's the friends that is so gnarly and feels so existential all the fucking time, especially middle school
Mhm.
and high school. I think it is obviously the internet stuff where again, like you take away these lessons.
I wish that you, like, were more of a dirtbag like I am when it comes to watching shows and stuff like that. Because if you had watched this show Unknown Number, which I think I talked about in Yes Right Now, it's about a girl who's getting bullied by a stranger on the, like, someone has been texting her saying, "Your boyfriend hates you, you should kill
Mm, mhm.
yourself." Can I spoil it for you? Can I just tell you what the spoiler is if I
I'm
told
not
you?
happy about it, but go ahead.
Okay, everyone, if you haven't listened, listen, turn it off. It's her mom. Her mom has been doing it the whole time, and this is a true thing that happened. And so imagine just being a normal girl in the year 2025, probably getting some kind of social media message telling you should kill yourself, either explicitly or, implicitly. And then to find out that it's your fucking mom, can't even wrap my brain around that. We all hate our kids sometimes, but I'm not going to pick up my phone and create a fake account and tell my kid to commit suicide over it. That's too much. Everyone has their line. Anyway.
But is that just an allegory for the parents who are like, well, if you were a little thinner, like
No,
that's the fucking road you're putting them on?
the craziest thing is that, like, this girl ends up finding out in front of her mom. Like, they have the police, like, footage where they tell the girl, "Your mom has been the one the whole time," and the mom is, like, trying to hug her basically and love on her, and this poor girl, I've never seen a more shell-shocked child just being like, "What the fuck? What the fuck is happening?" And anyway, that is a wild one for me. They're already being told that you should kill yourself. Knowing that's a thing that happens is already pretty hard, but usually you don't think it's coming from inside the actual house.
Why do you watch things like this?
This was based, first of all, on a really good article in The Cut in New York Magazine that I recommend
Sure.
people. And then, yeah,
I'm not
I
asking
think,
in a judgy way. I'm asking in a I couldn't. I'm asking for me, like, I cannot expose myself to anything remotely dark at this point. Someone's like, it's a beautiful indie movie about marriage drama. I'm like, nope.
oh, you would actually really like it because a big part of the show is how the school administrators are so stupid that they don't think it's possible to take the phones away from the kids. Instead, they're going to have security cameras and watch all the kids, and they're gonna do time stamps between when this girl they can't just take the phones away, and that is a huge part of the show is, like, how ineffectual the school administration is. So and I watched it because I was like, "How can they make this interesting again?" And they did. They managed to make like a show where you already have a crazy spoiler. They still managed to make it interesting all over again.
Well, that's the
Um,
highest measure, right? Are you going to watch Titanic? You know how
yeah,
it's
or
how it
the
goes.
yeah, or The Sixth Sense. You still wanna watch it. And so there's no good answer. There's no satisfactory answer. This woman seems just frankly, like, mentally ill, basically, and this girl, between when this happened and, like, the current day, she has a little nose ring, and she's very still, like, processing it, and I just was like, "I'm so glad you got that nose ring. Like, you deserve it. You
Mm.
need something after getting through that, and it's gonna be a hard road ahead." It is wild. So, anyway, I know that you think I'm crazy for watching these kind of things,
No,
but,
I don't.
you
Again,
know.
I'm not. It's not a judging you. It's a me. My immediate aversion to truly, again, the past 6, 7, 8 years, like anything remotely stressful.
Yeah, well, I as a mother and as an evil witch, who's talked right now about things like, shoving your child into his room, for instance, and things that are not perfect. I have a running list of like truly bad moms. It's pretty short, but
Mhm.
if you're like, that bitch is a bad mom. It's not just that she didn't breastfeed or that she went back to work. Like, this is a bad mom. And it brings me comfort. So this lady is like on the list now as someone who bullied her daughter and also possibly, sexually made overtones to her teenage boyfriend. So anyway, I'm doing good compared to her.
Great. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Again, set the bar low. That's the key.
And I
Set
won
the
an
bar low.
award too.
You
So
won
it
a
could be,
fucking award.
yeah.
And yeah, for the low cost of $599, you can play the trophy.
Well, to go back to that, by the way, you mentioned the validation, and I do like it. I do having something fun to put on LinkedIn like that. That is cute, but
100%.
but also I've paid to play in enough contests and things like that too. Sometimes where you're like, well, we weren't chosen necessarily from all of the podcasts in the whole world, but
Can I tell you what? We don't need to do that. We don't need to participate in that kind of shenanigans. We're the best podcast. Stop.
yeah,
For
true. Yeah.
child raising. That's it.
Yes.
That's it. You didn't enter, it's because you were scared. That's what
Exactly.
I'm saying.
Yeah,
So,
because you are probably watching your kid like a weakling, instead of buckling in for an hour and a half chat.
head to notrightnow.show for more, or send us feedback, questions, horror stories, doxing, whatever it is, at questions@notrightnow.show.